So I left the corporate world, not really sure what to do, but had an idea that perhaps it would be time to pick up the camera again. I had long since abandoned photography um, as my career got underway. There was just no time for it with family and other commitments. And it was something that I really enjoyed since I was planning to pursue that professionally, and it was something to get back into.
What made you decide to become a photographer and abandon all of that? Were you just bored with?
Yes.
Or did you have a pivotal moment where you're like, wow, I really miss photography and want to get back into it?
That wasn't so much it. The pivotal moment would be that the particular job I was doing at the time, I didn't enjoy it. I wasn't having a good time. It wasn't fun. It was rather a dysfunctional organization. Your life is what you make of it, any situation, what you make of it. I wasn't making the best of it. I didn't have passion for what I was doing, and I didn't have the drive anymore, and I was bored. I had perhaps seen what I was doing through and had no more ideas on that particular aspect. And it was just sheer drudgery. So when I departed and chose, and I did choose to leave, and I left, it was a matter of, so what am I going to do with the rest of my life, and what do I want to do, and how do I want to be engaged, and how do I want to become involved in things that I had missed out on for almost 30 years. So I started, I picked up my first camera seriously when I was 12 years old. So I had done a lot of work. I had a dark room. I used to do a lot at high school. I had done some professional gigs for people in my early days. But as I said, as I got involved in the corporate world, there just wasn't time for it. And then with the family and having more sophisticated equipment, because the cameras were more complicated when I was doing it, my family couldn't use the camera, and it was just a lot of equipment to cart around, and I just lost interest in it. The pivotal moment for me getting back into photography was I was a film photographer, and so I probably had a bias to film because that's what I was used to. The fact that it was real, that it had a legacy, that it would last, negatives last, and slides last. But in the 90s, we started to see the introduction of digital cameras, and they weren't great at first, and they were very, very expensive. We took a family trip up to the territories in 2004. It was a winter trip, and I had seen what some of the folks at the camp that we were staying at, it was a wilderness camp, what they had done with the digital camera in very harsh conditions. And I realized that digital photography had arrived, that the cameras were very good, and what you could do with them were very good. And so that summer I picked up my first digital camera and I started playing around with it to reacquaint myself with photography again, and just with the aspect of digital. It's not a whole lot different, but slightly different. But still with no clear focus on what I was going to do. What digital photography does, and it reduced the barrier to entry for almost everybody. They became less expensive. They became very easy to use because they're all computer controlled. Everybody could take a good picture, just point and shoot. Much better than you could in film, and you could take an unlimited number of pictures. And so the realization was, well, if I just was a straight photographer, why would my picture be any better than yours? It might be better than yours, but if you feel that you can take the same picture I can, regardless if you can or not, then you're not going to be interested in what I have to sell. And there are a lot of photographers out there selling their images. So it was during this time that I was playing with the camera and then using different software tools that I came on a style that I really liked, and that was taking my pictures, my prints, and turning them into paintings so that they looked like paintings. So if you people see my work and you talk to people about my work, they tend to refer them as paintings rather than photographs. But they are photographs that have been enhanced through software. My feeling was twofold. One, that I created a unique style and look. And anytime you're marketing anything and positioning a product or your software, anything, you want to be different. You don't want to be the same as 100 people because it's just a tougher market to compete in, and what makes you special. So my style is different. My composition, I have a good eye for composition, I have a good eye for lighting, and in photography those are the two most important things, composition and lighting. And I carved out this niche, and as I started doing this technique, and I was refining it, I was showing people what my shots looked like, what images looked like, very carefully, because if you didn't like it, well, that's just a reflection of me, right? So I had to be careful about the criticism, just to make sure that I didn't get too discouraged in what I was doing. But the acceptance was overwhelmingly positive. As I slowly built images and built a portfolio, I focused on architecture. It's not, I don't do it exclusively. I do people and landscapes, but architecture is what captures my imagination. And when we interact with architecture, we're in and out of buildings all the time. And they're an important part of our lives. And that's what makes the communities we live in unique, because they all have their different form and function. That is, they all look slightly different. They have unique sets of architecture and placement. I mean placement of buildings. Styles are the same, but the buildings are all different, and the how they're arranged is different. So that's how you can tell if you're in Brantford or Peterborough or Paris, right, by the layout. And what I noticed when I started doing this is that as we go through our lives, we don't pay attention anymore. We get in our car, we walk, and we go from point A to point B because the destination is important. How we get there, we've done it countless times. We stop looking. So as you drive through the city, you don't pay attention anymore. You don't look at what's around you, and then sometimes when you do stop and look, you're sometimes quite amazing of what is actually there. If you stand at Victoria Park and you look at the old Carnegie Library building, which is now Laurier, I mean, that's a magnificent building with the pillars and the way it stands high and proud and very strong building. Or the county courthouse, which dates back to the 1856, which is a magnificent structure. And then on either side of it, you have the Bell building, which is just an excellent, solid building. All these are examples of a prosperous community and a proud community. And then Brantford City Hall, which is which I think is a fabulous piece of architecture. I know it's a very polarizing building because of the type of architecture. People love or hate it. But you start, I started to pay attention to these, and as I recorded them, what I learned, and as I used my style to represent these buildings, is I was finding features on the buildings that I'd never noticed, because I'm no different than anyone else out there. I'm not really paying attention. I need to get to the front door and into the building and where I want to go. And so it was all the finishing touches. And architects and builders, when they design and build buildings, I mean, there's tons of little details that they put on that we just take for granted and then we totally ignore. And it was through my process that I used that I rediscovered all the features and all the little embellishments, everything they did to make these buildings beautiful buildings. And what I find as I show my work is that as people look at the buildings for the first time, usually, because they don't really pay attention, they start to notice all these details and all these features. And I think what's most striking and my favorite part about exhibitions, it's not that the people recognize the features in the buildings. It's the stories they tell me about the building, like the first time their grandfather took them to the library, or sitting on the lions at the Federal Building, at the post office building, because for a long period of time, any kid who grew up in Brantford sat on the lions and played on the lions. So there's all memories associated with that. And it's the stories that people share with me about their experiences, with that building, which I find fascinating. So what I likened it to is that the images almost become their search engine, their Google for their memories. So instead of typing a word, they see the image, and that all of a sudden brings back a whole bunch of memories, and they start talking about it. And I really enjoy listening to it. It's very rich history in this community, and people have a lot of stories that they just can't wait to tell you. So.